Welcome to the Generic Tech Support YouTube channel. This video is created in hopes to save you money. Like and subscribe for more content. So in today's video, I'm going to show you how to install Windows 11 on older hardware. It doesn't really make any difference if you're on a Windows 10 machine like what we're looking at right now. If you're on Windows 7, Windows 8, Windows 8.1, it's totally fine. I'm going to show you how to install Windows 11 on old hardware that doesn't have a trusted platform module. And I'm going to show you how to get the Windows 11 drivers for your HP, your Lenovo, your Dell, your MSI, your Acer, whatever your machine may be. 90% of the time, the drivers that I'm going to share with you will work on that system. And I'm going to show you how to do that. So one of the major setbacks with doing this, obviously, is going to be latency and speed. To those effects, it's going to be slow. I'm going to tell you right now, it's going to be slow because on new hardware, Windows 11 is a boat anchor. But if you want to run Windows 11 for whatever reason on your older hardware, I'm going to show you how to do it. The thing is once you get it installed, what you do with it, that's the question. Because ultimately, a lot of the things out of the box, at least, probably won't work. You're probably going to struggle to get things like your network adapter to work, wireless adapter to work, video card drivers to work, etc., etc., etc. However, there are generics that you can install. And the thing is that most manufacturers, like MSI, for instance, or Acer, they'll have a website that says that they only support whatever it is, Windows 10 or Windows 8, Windows 8.1, whatever the system was actually shipped with. But that doesn't mean that the manufacturer of the actual components of the system do not support Windows 11. It just means that the manufacturer who resold those components as a complete system, like MSI, the manufacturer themselves, right? They don't support Windows 11. Meaning that they want you to upgrade your machine to the later version of whatever the machine is in order for you to get the drivers. Now, you could go to every single website and locate the specific card that you run and download the specific file that you need and store that somewhere outside of your actual machine on a thumb drive or whatnot in order to go through the process of installing those drivers after the system is actually built. And that totally does work. But I'm going to show you a trick to make this a lot easier. So Dell, now this doesn't really matter if you have a Dell or not, but Dell actually provides you with something called a deployment driver pack for enterprise clients. And the reason why this is important is because if you're in any system, it doesn't make any difference. Generally speaking, those systems use a specific set of drivers. So every Intel-based chip that's from a certain year will likely use the same version of drivers, the same board, the same configuration. Whether it's a Dell, an MSI, Lenovo, an HP, any of those systems should use the same driver packs, which means that you could use an organized driver pack from the Dell Enterprise website. Now, you could search for this on HP, Lenovo, and all those other sites, but I haven't had much luck finding cab files or executables that contain a full driver suite like the Dell website does. So for instance, if we look at this, we have XPS, Latitude, Optiplex, Precision, IoT. So if you have an IoT system and you want to download and use the IoT version of Windows 11 on your MSI system and you know what generation that system is from, you could grab the Dell IoT driver pack and use those drivers on your system. You may have to use multiple driver packs and put them together and create one large INF configuration of all drivers, but you could do that. Same thing with ARM, and then down here you'll actually see the family pack drivers, and you'll also see the PE driver packs. Now, if you use the PE driver pack and click on the Windows 11 PE driver pack, in here you're going to find that you're going to more than likely be able to locate your network adapter listed in this list of all different network and storage adapters for the PE configuration. And then you just download this 27 meg file, like so. So we're going to download that 27 meg file, which there we go. We got 27.3 meg downloaded. And if we go to show in folder, we're going to cut this. And we'll go to our tools directory and paste it in here. And now at this point, we have a cab file. But how do we extract the drivers from the cab file? All we have to do is we have to just right click, go to 7-zip. Now, if you didn't grab 7-zip already, grab 7-zip. And extract 7-zip files directly to the desktop. We're going to have an error. That's okay. Not a big deal. And if we open this up and we go into the WinPE folder and into 64-bit and into network, here's all the drivers. So at this point, we could use Device Manager and actually search within these folders by clicking the little checkbox, and I'll show you real quick. So we go to Device Manager, and we locate, say, our network adapter, and we right-click on this and do Update Driver, and then Browse for Drivers, and then Browse, and go into our location where we have our drivers downloaded, and say Network, and choose OK. We want to make sure that we have the Include Subfolders checked, and we would click Next. Now at that point, the system will look to see if there's a driver available in this list that matches your system. Because ultimately, once you get Windows 11 installed, the only thing that really matters is your network adapter. Once you have your network adapter connected, you could do a search for all the other drivers, or you could download a piece of third-party software like Belarc Advisor, for instance, that'll scan your local system for missing drivers and help you find the additional drivers on your local system. But the main thing you have to find is the network driver that's going to work on your system. And chances are, if you're on an older piece of hardware, you're not going to be able to find it on the manufacturer's website. So using something like Dell, where they really haven't changed the manufacturer revision of the driver, for instance, the Realtek controller has existed since Windows 7. The upgraded version of the driver exists for Windows 11, but you're probably not going to find it anywhere else but the Dell site. Let's say, for instance, you went through this and you didn't find the driver you needed to find. I'm going to show you how to actually use the Dell website to help you with this. So if we dip back to the original Dell location here, and we scroll down further in the system here, we're going to see options. So like for instance, if we know that we want to do like a family driver pack, we click on this, we go in here and we go into the Dell family driver pack for Windows, and we have Windows 11 here listed also for 21H2, and we scroll down in here. If you could find the machine that closely resembles in this same exact time frame. So for instance, if you have an MSI machine from circa 2023, then chances are the 2023 version of the Dell will likely have the same configuration. At that point, you could just grab the drivers. Now you'll notice at the top here, it does indicate that these are just for Windows 10 with one for Windows 11. But if we scroll down here further, we're going to see that we also have the Optiplex versions in here as well. So if you have a desktop versus a laptop, or a Precision, which is more server related, so you can actually find drivers for things that use like a Xeon chipset in here, which may be difficult for you to find elsewhere, or the XPS notebooks, which are usually embedded systems. So if you don't have memory that's changeable, or you don't have removable hard drive and it's an embedded chip, you're going to find the drivers through here for your system as well, more than likely. If you have a cheaper machine, like a Chinesian machine, you're going to find that the Vostro is going to find all the drivers that you're going to need as well. Because again, these are not machines that are necessarily all US based, but this will help you find the additional driver packs. Now, you could click and download every single one of these things and then extract every single one of them with 7-zip, put them all in a single folder, and then make yourself one giant driver pack for all machines. So something else I do want to point out here is it's important to pay attention to the actual BIOS revision. And the reason why is because on the Dell site, you'll notice A14. Well, these two links are exactly the same. So if you click on either one of these links, it's going to open up the download location to download the entire driver pack for that particular version of BIOS. It's not based off of the machine, even though it does show the machine name. It's based off of the BIOS version. So if your BIOS version is from, say, 2020, and you scroll through here on the Windows 11 side and eventually find one from 2020, maybe 2021, you could grab those drivers and download them directly to your system. And again, that'll contain all the drivers for that particular BIOS revision and not based solely on the machine itself. I want to show you one more thing while I'm in here is like we're going to click on the XPS system. So I went back to the main site. And once we're in the XPS system here, you're going to see like XPS 17 and we'll see Windows 11, click link to download here. Now that'll open up a new window, and in the new window, what we're going to look for specifically is the status. Now on the right hand side, if you see no change, that means that this driver is a Windows 10 driver and it works on Windows 11. However, if you see replaced, that means that this driver is proprietary to Windows 11. So if you use the Windows 10 drivers that came with your machine or that are currently running, that means that those Windows 10 drivers should work mostly. But if you run into situations where some of them don't work, make sure you download whatever it is that corresponds. Now, you'll notice since I'm in the XPS thing here, we do have the name of the driver. which means that if you know specifically what you're looking for, you could actually use this site to find it, even if you can't find it on the manufacturer's website. Okay, so for the sake of this video, what I'm going to actually do is, because we do have a single change that takes place inside of our drivers for our XPS, I'm going to download the XPS driver pack. And I'm actually going to do this for two reasons. Number one, because we have a change. And number two, because this one is an executable versus the last one, which was a CAD file. So once this one downloads, we'll kick it off and we'll take a look at how we can extract an exe and do the same thing. Okay, so we have our package downloaded. Here it is. And we go into view and we do file name extensions. We should see that it's an exe file, but that doesn't really make any difference. What we're going to do is we're going to right click on this. We're going to choose 7-zip, which, by the way, if you don't have it installed, you'll need 7-zip. You're going to do extract. So you're going to click on this. It's probably going to throw an error during the extraction process. That's totally okay because we don't need every piece of file from the exe during the extraction. So let's wait for this thing to finish. Okay, so that finished. So now if I go into the XPS again, I have the XPS, I have Windows 11, x64, and here's all the drivers, right? So I have all the video drivers, I have the chipset drivers, I have the docking station drivers, I have the network drivers. They all exist in here, and if I expand these folders and actually go into the driver folder eventually, you will find the drivers. And what you got to do is when you want to import the drivers because you're talking about a raw file, you'll have to go into your device manager on your Windows 11 system. You'll have to locate where you have all the question marks for things or drivers that have not been installed. And then you'll have to right click on whatever it is. Let's do, just for the sake of this, let's try network adapters. And let's right click and let's do update driver and browse the local machine and browse. And we're going to go into the C drive and into tools and into the XPS. There's Windows 11, 64. Then we're going to go to network and we're going to click on OK and then click on next. And you'll want to make sure you have the include subfolders checked. And you would click on next and that would search. Now, if it finds something newer or better, it will automatically apply. If we do that again and do let me pick, you'll see show compatible hardware. I can have disk, browse, change it from my System32 location to my tools directory to the XPS, Windows 11, 64, network. And we're going to specifically look for an INF file, which should be in here somewhere. So there we go, Killer Networks INF, hit open, hit OK. And as you can see, this particular system is not going to allow me to do this because I'm on an x86 system. But at any rate, those drivers do exist in those subfolders without the executable, which means that you could use those drivers to actually install on your Windows 11 system. So let me show you now how to rip an ISO file to a thumb drive without the Trusted Platform module, so that way you could actually install Windows 11 without a TPM module. Okay, so you're going to need Rufus version 4.6 or 4.7. I would suggest using 4.7 because it has the latest updates and configuration in it. The next thing you're going to need is the ISO file for Windows 11. I have one for 24H2. And you're going to need the ability to have a thumb drive that has at least probably 8 to 16 gigs of free space on it. So once you have the thumb drive mounted, you'll just double click on your Rufus application. You'll choose yes. You'll continue on. Once you get in here, you're going to choose the USB drive you want. Then you're going to choose select. You'll go into your C drive. In my case, in the tools directory. And then I'll choose the ISO file and hit open. And what that's going to do is it's going to scan the image. And now you're going to want to make sure you have an internet connection when you do this because it will make a difference. So we're going to see standard Windows installation, which is what we want. We want to leave it as GPT. We want to leave the UEFI configuration done. And we're going to click on Start. Now, this is where we're going to get a pop-up. And specifically, the pop-up is going to indicate the options we can make for our Trusted Platform module. So this is what these options should look like to you. What we're going to see here is the ability to remove the requirement for 4+ gigs, the secure boot, and the TPM 2.0. So we're going to leave that checked. Then we're going to remove the requirement for an online Microsoft account. Now, if you don't do this, you could do the Shift F10, and then you could use the, after it reboots, or rather, it'll open a command prompt. You'll have to do OOBE /no I think it's NRO bypass or bypass NRO. I can't remember off the top of my head. I'll put the link to the other video in the description so you can do that if you're curious how to do it. Otherwise, you could just leave the checkbox to remove the requirements for an online account. And then at that point, you'll be able to create a local account. If you want to set a default value for your username, you can. If you want to set regional options for the same as this computer or this user, you can. If you want to disable the data collection, so in other words, skip the privacy questions and disable everything, you can. If you want to disable the automatic BitLocker option, you can. Now, I would suggest you leave just these 4 checked and then create your own user account during the process. Now, once you have this done, you'll just click on OK. And you're going to get a notification on the screen that it's going to destroy the data on the thumb drive. We're going to click on OK. And then at that point, what you're going to see is the configuration is actually going to start to write the data to the ISO, or rather write the ISO file to the actual thumb drive. Now, once this completes, what we're going to do is we're going to copy over all of our drivers to the same thumb drive. And it's not going to make any difference on the actual installation process because it should install without any problem on any machine that runs like Vista Forward. But it will make a difference at the end when it comes to actually adding the drivers to the system. So something I want to point out is, number one, if you have x86 hardware still, like this is an x86 machine, I could download the ISO for Windows 11. I could attempt to install it, but it would fail because x86 machines, 32-bit machines, will not run Windows 11. Windows 11 is 64-bit platform only. Something else I want to point out is that even though it installs, doesn't mean it's going to work well. Because again, Windows 11 is a bloated disaster. So if you install this on older hardware, be prepared for that older hardware to turn into a catastrophic boat anchor. There's really no way around that with Windows at this point, because even on the newest of the new hardware, again, this particular system runs a Ryzen 9. I think it's a 9950X. It's got 24 cores. It's got 64 gigs DDR5. It's running a Gen 5 PCIe Express, the X64 or X32 solid-state hard drive that does, I think it's 24 gigabits per second throughput. Windows 11 is a boat anchor on this system. So I can't even imagine it running it on like a Core 2 Duo processor. It would probably be cataclysmically slow. But if you decide you want to do it, then this is the way you would do it. You could mount the ISO file and do the configuration on that machine, install the operating system by unchecking, or rather checking the remove options for the things that we shown earlier in the video here. But it just doesn't make much of a difference because it's still going to be slow. There's no way around that, at least on the Windows 11 side. So the last thing I want to talk about here, which is kind of important, is licensing. Because technically speaking, if your machine is Windows 10 and a 7th gen, it probably doesn't have the updated BIOS configuration to support a Windows 11 install. So chances are when you do a fresh install of the ISO file, you're going to get a trial key, and it's not going to give you the ability to install it with an actual OEM licensed key. So that's just something to keep in mind with that. The other thing to keep in mind is that when you're talking about licensing, if the machine does support the upgrade to Windows 11, but then doesn't have the driver support and you still want to do a fresh install, this is the way to do it. So in other words, if you, for instance, have like, for instance, my MSI machine, which doesn't have the driver support for Windows 11, if I upgrade it to Windows 11, it has all the crap from the previous build. And yeah, I could do the in-place reset, but it still continues to keep a lot of the bloat as far as a cache. I could do a fresh install after I do the upgrade to Windows 11. So run the upgrade to Windows 11, let that Windows 11 chew for like 24, 48 hours with an internet connection, and then pop the ISO file or the thumb drive into the system, boot off of it, and do a fresh install of the Windows 11 operating system. And that will give you the ability to clean that machine up completely as if it was an OEM factory fresh install. But if you're doing an upgrade to an operating system that isn't technically supported on an OS, you have a real hard time with the licensing portion. Okay, so we just finished out our installation. So what I'm going to do here is I'm going to right click, I'm going to go File Explorer. We're going to go to this PC, and I'm going to open up in a new window the actual thumb drive that I just created for the Windows 11 configuration. Then I'm going to close this out. And in here, I'm going to grab the drivers, right? So what I'm going to do is I'm actually just going to right-click on this. I'm going to rename it to drivers. I'm going to right-click on it again. I'm going to do copy. Then I'll go back in and I'm going to right click and I'm going to do paste. Now, this isn't going to help you in the installation unless you browse to the actual thumb drive and grab the drivers. But what this will help you with is the ability to store the drivers on a single thumb drive if you only have one laying around, and you're going to do a reinstall, which is clearly going to wipe the machine you're currently on. This will give you a place to put those drivers, so that way when you do the install, after the install is complete, you can still browse to the location, grab the drivers, and add the drivers to the install. If you don't want to do that and you want to slipstream the drivers, what you're going to have to do is you're going to have to find either Nlite or NT-Lite, and you likely have to purchase it. And then you'll have to add the drivers to the WIM and add the configuration, so that way the drivers are part of the installation package. Now, you could do that. You could add every single driver in Umanity to the Windows 11 installation disk, the ISO file, and then use that ISO file to install that base version of Windows 11 on every single piece of hardware you have. And that'll absolutely work. But you're likely going to need to purchase a license in order to do that. And for the sake of this video, I'm just showing you an easy way to copy these data over to the other machine so you could actually install it on the other machine without the need to actually have an OEM branded Dell system to install these drivers. And I'm 100% positive somebody will throw down in the comments, well, why don't you just use the manufacturer site? Honestly, Dell's site is so well organized and put together as far as drivers are concerned, where you could download family drivers and driver configuration packs, the PE drivers. You could download all these different sets of drivers to add to a single ISO file. And the vast majority of the drivers that Dell uses are the same drivers that every other manufacturer uses. So having that actual INF file just available in an easy to grab single location versus searching every single website for every single piece of hardware with every single revision from every single manufacturer sounds like a nightmare to me. So if you're in that situation, just grab that executable or the cab files in the older generations and then use 7-zip to extract it. You'll have access to all the INF files. You can add the INF files to a central repository, grab that repository, throw it on the thumb drive you're going to run the install for your ISO configuration for your Windows 11 or your Windows 10 or any other Windows operating system, and it'll include all of the drivers just on it, so you could grab them through the device manager and just bam, 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 install them and be done with it. Okay, so at this point, we have our thumb drive created. We can now mount this in our machine. We could hit F12 on most machines. F8 could be an option, or F2 or escape could also be an option on different hardware to get this system to recognize the thumb drive to boot off of it. Importantly, you need the later version of the BIOS. So you need UEFI support. You can't use legacy BIOS configuration to run Windows 11. So even though you don't have the trusted platform module, there is going to be a cutoff on hardware somewhere along the lines of probably the first, second, third gen, maybe Intel iCore processor. I don't know if you'll be able to go older than that. I don't exactly know when the newer UEFI BIOS came out. The thing is you could look and you could find that it was invented, I think in 2002 is when it was first introduced by Intel, but technically speaking, it didn't really become mainstream until after 2005, but then what generations after 2005 is a little shaky on when UEFI became the standard. I don't know if it was the introduction to Windows 7 or if it was the introduction to Vista, but somewhere around that time period, legacy BIOS became called legacy BIOS and the UEFI came out. So you're going to have to check on your hardware. Make sure your BIOS version at least is completely up to date to the latest version to see if maybe you could support the UEFI if you can't already support it. But that's going to be a necessity in order for you to install the Windows 11 configuration. Also keep in mind that technically speaking, the Windows 11 operating system requires DDR4 memory. So you can run it on DDR3, but again, speed constraint. Technically speaking, it requires an NVMe drive. It could be a SATA NVMe drive, but it requires an NVMe drive to be installed. It'll still work on a SATA 2.5-inch SSD. However, again, speed. You're talking about the differences in system bus. So I mean, if the bus speed is, your system cache is very low, you're going to have a lot of probably breaks in the operating system where you'll double click on something and it'll freeze before it comes to again. That's usually caused by that front side bus. So I mean, you're talking about the difference in like 1/16th of the speed on like a 2005 machine versus a current machine. So that's going to cause some issues as well. But I would tell you, if you're interested, you have like a 7th gen i9 or something like that, and you're like, oh, it's just as fast as like a i5 and an 8th gen, it just doesn't have the TPM. Give it a shot. You might have to buy a license. That's the only thing I will say, is that you might have to buy a license for Windows 11 in order to actually use it. But heck, a license is a lot cheaper at this point than hardware is. So give it a shot. Let me know down in the comments if this was helpful. If it's not, let me know that too. Hopefully you guys enjoyed this one. I don't really have any way to showcase installing this on a non-TPM machine. Most of my hardware is new enough where it has TPM support, and the systems that I have that are old enough, Windows 11 is never going to run on. Like for instance, I think I have in a closet here a Pentium 1. I don't think Windows 11 is going to run on that. I also think I have a Core 2 Quad somewhere on a laptop. I'm 100% positive Windows won't run on that. That doesn't even support SATA. It's got an IDE drive. So likely that machine will be repurposed to my Granite machine, but I don't think it's going to run on that. So again, let me know down in the comments if this is helpful. I'll have all the links to all the software used in this on the Granite web, or rather the Generic Tech Support website. Feel free to grab it. The link will be in there in the description on the website under the hashtag channel. And thanks again for watching. Thank you for watching the Generic Tech Support YouTube channel. Find the content of this video at https://generictechsupport.com/hashtag channel.